All right, everybody, we are back. Season 2 of The Gray Matters is here. We want to thank you for being a part of our show. We are bringing you all the hot topics and headlines that are current to us today from a black man's perspective. We appreciate that we're not a monolith, and every subject deserves to be explored with some nuance, a little culture, a little class, a little grace. So we hope that we can bring you not only some information and something to think about, but we can also always bring you a little bit of fun, something that you can enjoy, but something that you can think about. Our panel consists of three guys that, as you already know, are nothing alike, and yet we still love each other in spite of our sometimes very big differences. I am Billy Craig, joining you from a slightly less sunny but still warm Delaware. And I'm joined today by my partners in crime, Patrick out in Nashville or thereabouts, and Squidward, who joins us from out near Portland, somewhere out on the West Coast. So good day, gentlemen. Hey, but I mean, at least but it fits, right? You know, how you doing, Patrick? You like being Patrick?
You gonna call me the round one? You ain't shit for that. I'm gonna just go ahead and start it off. We're gonna get the flagship going already. Go ahead.
I'm just saying. I mean, it fits. I mean, you know, I'm a sponge, so what?
Right.
When you say Paul, say it like you say. I'm
them little ass legs.
Oh, we doing that? Yeah, we do.
You started it.
Stand up.
Right. You started it. No leg day.
Hey, listen, man, my leg day killed the average man. All righty, well, let's go ahead and get into it then.
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Last week we tried to burn the village down.
Right.
We're gonna go ahead and keep the flames going on this.
We're gonna do a damage assessment first.
We're gonna keep the flames going on this one. So this week, it's been boiling for a while. It seems to be a new generation kind of thing. At least that's what we're gonna blame it on. But we're gonna talk about parenting and or the lack thereof. In certain situations and overall as a whole, because now we have so-called psychologists and child psychologists that are getting involved, saying that, you know, everybody has to have their feelings and protections and all of this, and you need to be your kids' friends and less of an authority figure and all this other shit that shouldn't really apply, but we'll get into that. But recently there was a video of a young black child. I don't know specifically her age. We'll say it was high school. That got into it with a teacher that took her phone. Now, the teacher took the entire class. According to reports, the teacher took the entire class's phone because they wasn't focused. She gave everybody back their phone except for this one girl, because the one girl was being hella disrespectful. And so the girl came up, told some people to record because she about to go file off on this teacher, and what ended up working out, what she thought was about to happen, did not happen.
She found out.
She found out in a mighty way.
That, you know the rest.
Right. You know the beginning. I'm just gonna finish. Right. Yeah, she found out.
She found out the teacher had hands. And she was
and time.
And time. So with those time and hands, she gave a lesson plan to anybody who was willing to receive it that day.
Yeah.
And there were two camps. One was saying that the teacher was dead wrong. The other was saying that the little girl was dead wrong. But the part that we're focusing on is, where were the parents in this whole thing? Because much like, this will be a couple weeks ago at this point in time, but much like Draymond Green responded to Sabonis, had he not had his leg grabbed, he wouldn't have got his chest stomped on. Had this little girl not swung on the teacher wouldn't have had to lay hands on her. So where are the parents in all of this? And this is going to be part of a larger discussion, because we have a lot of, we titled this Parenting Fails, but the failure is to not parent in certain situations. And so we're going to flush this out. and kind of see where people where we stand, and we want to hear from where y'all stand on this as well. But we're gonna just start off with a general question of how we were raised. Billy, when you were raised, what kind of rearing did you have when it came to authority figures? And we'll let it run from here.
Oh, mighty bold of you to assume that I was raised by anybody other than a pack of wolves. But no, all jokes aside, I was raised, and I was raised. My parents, I'll say it like this: my parents eventually got divorced, but my entire time at home, from the time that I can remember when I was born to the time that I graduated high school before I moved out and went to college, I knew nothing other than having both of my parents. Now, the reason why I start there is because my parents both had agreement on kind of the basic stuff, um, but they had two totally different parenting styles. My father was a bit unique and different in that he was more than willing to um, listen. He was not big on corporal punishment. He didn't do a lot of like we. I can literally remember, I think, 3 times that my father gave me a whooping. Like, now my mom, it was like, she had a switch in every room. Like, I'm not even kidding. She had one on the refrigerator, one in the bathroom, one upstairs in the bedroom.
Like, bad.
Hey, and that's kind of the point, is that you didn't have to be bad to get a whooping from my mom. My father, it would like you really like you always knew you deserved it if my father had to get to that point. Now, I say that only to say that, and this goes back to a different topic we had a couple weeks ago, talking about um, one of the things in relationships you have to find when it comes to parenting. And this becomes increasingly hard when you're co-parenting from different homes. If you can't agree on how you're going to raise the kids. Now, one of the really strong agreements that my parents had that I took and I've carried into my marriage and with my family is that even if my wife and I disagree, almost never is there an appropriate time or situation where we should disagree in front of the kids. That doesn't mean that you can't have open conversation. You be like, "Girl, you tripping? Don't do that." I'm talking about on actual serious matters. Like, I'm not going to be, I'm not willing to display open objections and things like that in front of my kids. And it's not because my kids are fragile and sensitive. It's just because the fact is, um, at the end of the day, they need to know that whatever has been decided, that it's been decided. And even if I don't agree, I'm deferring to my wife or something, or vice versa, then that's how it's going to get handled. You're not going to play me against your mom. But getting back to the topic specifically, when it comes to this, I always, and I know this from not only working with kids in different lanes and different avenues, what I found is that I don't have to know much about um, I don't have to know much about you as long as I've spent time around your kids, because your kids show me what type of parent you are, how they talk, how they treat me. If they're not respectful to me, I already know that you're raising them a particular type of way. That doesn't mean that every time a child does something wrong that it's because they live in a bad home. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying that even how you course correct and how you discipline, I know how you course correct and discipline based on how your children respond to correction, how they respond to coaching, how they respond to things they don't like when they don't get their way. There's all these things. And so, to the point about this little girl, we see it with, kids, cussing out, like you see it. I've seen it in the store. I saw it. In fact, I was in Target a couple weeks ago. Little boy, little girl in there clowning their mama, like getting mad because they wanted to buy some candy in the checkout, and the mama's like, no. And they're like throwing the candy at her and everything. And I had like a whole Jebediah Freeman moment, right? Where I wanted to take my belt off. I don't think that there's one particular parenting style that is best, but the way that I was raised was if you don't seek to understand your children and you're just trying to make it where I want you to do it my way, I want you to mine, or there's going to be consequences, then you end up setting your children up to where they don't know how to function in the world. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing I can do, or the biggest disservice I can do my kids, is not prepare them for the world that they're getting ready to go out and live in once they're old enough and they're not under me anymore. And for all the discrepancies and things that maybe I didn't like or things that were problematic about how I was raised, my parents did an adequate job of raising me and my sisters to understand the basic stuff like authority, responsibility, how to get along with people, and how to, frankly, not just avoid conflict, but how to handle conflict. And I think that's where we find a lot of these kids, they don't know anything other than fighting or being angry or getting their way, or even they're so emotionally fragile. Like, I think about the bullying stuff, right? And these kids out here, just like, I'm like, and I'm not to, throw shade at these kids. I understand it's a different time, but I'm like, what is a cyber bully? Like, you can't get to me. Like, you physically can't touch me. You don't even know where I live. What do you mean a cyber bully? Log off. But again, how do you handle conflict? My son and my daughter go through this with people online where it's like, they're like, dude, what's your problem? And they log off and they're like, oh, guess I got to find me another community on Minecraft because I ain't fooling with him no more. But that is a taught, learned set of behaviors and skills that as parents we have to give our kids. Otherwise, they won't be prepared for the world that they're going to live in. Now, I wasn't raised by, I know Paul was raised by a pack of wolves. So.
My childhood was, I would put it in sections, right? The first section, okay, so my mother had me and then graduated high school. Like, I saw my mama graduate, not like, I don't like to remember it, but literally, I was at my mama's high school graduation, right? So I'm pretty sure was forced to marry that guy. He died when I was 2. So I don't really remember that period of my life too much. Then after that, when I really start to come online is like, late 70s, she has this dude that she's dating. So he's like a stepfather figure, right? Who's working at this bank or whatever. Well, they got together. He actually left his whole family. Yeah, that's a real memory I remember is picking him up from his family and him getting in our car. Yeah. Wow, right?
Yeah,
what a time to be alive.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real memory I had.
Wow.
Right. So this guy was like the father figure. He's like in my brain. He's like the first father figure I had. Now, he taught me a lot about sports, got me into, being good at ball or whatever. Cause it was just me and my mama until about 4 or 5, which say before that, it was just me and her. So I was a little mama's boy, a little soft, you know what I'm saying? Right. So he came around and put the dog in me a little bit. Now, some would call that abuse. I got told up today with the belt. They would call it abuse. Like,
back in the 70s,
I would get stolen in my chest just for looking too happy. Y'all remember that when you get flared on in your chest by the OGs?
That was called love back in the 70s, in the 80s.
Right. Yeah, in the 80s, right? So then they split. Yeah, then they split up, and she got with this other dude who wound up, and she married this other dude who wound up dying. So this lady had buried 2 husbands by the time she was 30, right? So, yeah. So I'm a latchkey kid.
You raised yourself.
So, yeah, I got tore out the frame like early by the first dude after my father. He's dead now, so I'm not even going to put his name out there because he got kids and all that type of stuff. But those kids know who they are because they bullied me on sleepovers because my mama took their daddy from their mama.
And they kind of
they took it out on me.
But at your age, you can understand it. Like,
I didn't understand nothing. I just thought they was mean.
No, I'm saying now.
Yeah, now I can understand.
That's what I'm saying.
As a grown man, I could understand it. But then I just hated whenever they would come over.
Yeah.
Like, I got to fight one of these people. You know what I'm saying? They going to play with all my toys and not let me play with nothing. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I was the littlest one. They was all older than me, so they would just pick on me and play with all my stuff. All right. So we go to that, the dude after that who wound up dying early, I might add. And she was more consumed with him. Again, I'm a latchkey kid, right? So after he passed, this is when I get to FP. We move into my grandmama's house.
Right.
This is when I get into my grandmama's house. And at that point in time, my mama was gone and it was me and my grandmother. So I would, have to cut the grass and do things like that around the house or whatever for her. You know what I'm saying? But I would see my mama whenever I saw her. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like she was absentee. She worked a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? She worked 2 jobs. She only had a high school education, so she worked 2 phone jobs. You know what I'm saying? And that was, and then couple that with grades, that's how I was getting through St. X. You know what I'm saying? So she had a dude, and then my senior year of high school, she had my sister, which I really don't know because I was out of the house while she grew up.
Right. You're old enough to be out doing.
Yeah. We don't really know each other like that. Right. But I say that to say that I wouldn't call my childhood bad because I know people who had it way worse than me. But it certainly wasn't ideal. It wasn't the Cosby Show. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Not like Andre.
I knew this was coming. I had a countdown going. I was like, he about
to nuclear, beautiful, happy Christmas, Easter, vacations.
You said when you said E-section wrong.
Right.
So what they're alluding to as jackasses. I had the all-American family with mom and dad, only marriage,
Cliff, Claire,
good jobs and all of that. But I, much like y'all, I had my raising had stages.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a disciplinarian early on, and then my mom kind of took over. Not really, like once I was so. Reality and Billy, and we talked about this last season. By the time I was 11, I was 6 feet tall. Like I was bigger than both my parents by the time I was 11. So whooping really didn't really apply after I think my last whooping I had when I was like 9. And I didn't really get a lot of them. But then after I turned 11, my parents decided, here's the failure stage of life. We're going to let you learn from your mistakes. And so there wasn't a lot of, I got grounded, obviously, in just normal, regular, hey, we're going to take the, we're about to date ourselves, but PlayStation away or the Atari or whatever that is at that point in time, whatever the game was.
Sega.
Yeah, I was about to say Sega.
Sega, Genesis.
So, those were like the regular punishments. But, the thing for me was I played in so many sports, I was always out anyway. So it didn't really.
We all were. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so they let me kind of figure out life. But the one thing, and to get back to where we started, but the one thing that they always taught me was, respect for authorities, respect for authority figures. And even to this day, like that still applies. It's not, and I know there's and this is where we get to this point of, and this is where we're going to spin this off, where this new generation is the first one where I really see where like people don't, I don't know if the word is respect, but they definitely don't honor authority the way that we did back then. Not saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, or anything like that. Like actually, and it's not even the fact that it's not even like it's frowned upon. Like don't call them sir or ma'am, like as opposed to whatever happens naturally. But all of us grew up in the sports arena. It was a yes sir, for coaches and stuff like that. So it is not that I'm kissing anybody's ass. That's just whether I was on the bench or I was starting. Like yes sir was what you were supposed to say. And now it seems to be that this new generation is kind of like this little girl who got handled by her teacher. I have to blame the parents because they setting her up to fail. Like because and the only reason I'm saying that is if you don't recognize the difference in authority figures in you, like you're going to have a hard time in life. I'm not saying that she's not going to make it in life. Please don't trust me. I'm not saying that I want this little girl to fail, but there's a certain level where you're always going to work for somebody until you don't. And there's a certain level of decorum and respect that you have to have for people that you've never met in order to even be remotely successful in any kind of job. Unless you're just going to stay at the bottom of the job. And the reason I say she's setting up to fail is because right now, arguing with teachers and arguing with bosses, that's the quickest way to stay at an entry-level position.
Well, first of all, I want to add to what you just said. Okay. That teacher's a substitute.
Okay.
So there's context, right? So that teacher really don't take that job serious. I know subs. They just go in there and they didn't go to school for education. These schools are so understaffed. They'll take anybody who don't have any violence or theft on their record,
or they haven't touched a child. So it's like you're going to get $70 today to make sure nobody hurts themselves.
Exactly.
Until they go home. Yeah.
Right. That's what that is. So, and kids know. So kids have no respect for subs, and I'm not taking it out on that little girl. But I'm not necessarily going to blame the parents either, though. And the reason I'm saying that is because good people do raise some bad kids.
Yeah.
And there are some bad people who raise good kids. Like I know people who are bad, like really bad, like in the world, like criminals that tell their kids to do right. And I know people who are highly accomplished that let their kids do whatever they want. You know what I mean? So it goes both ways, especially like going to them rich schools, St. X, white kids was off the chain.
Man, that is 100% fact because the same thing happened at Moeller. And now Billy, you lived in Nashville at one point in time, so you already know that the ones who are the most buck in the city attend Vanderbilt.
Yeah. It ain't the TSU and Fisk crowd.
Dude. The
down Broadway.
The amount of crime that happens on West End
right.
from Vandy students trumps anything that you'll ever see at TSU. But so I get what you're saying, Paul. Like,
but just to add to that though, and this is kind of where I take off on it. I don't totally. First of all, substitute or no substitute, you got to be the adult. And short of your life or your physical, like, the girl, I mean, don't get me wrong. We know how it went. She found out. But what I'm saying is this. I'm not totally absolving the teacher, but here's where I come down on that. I find that going back to what I want to go back to what Andre was saying about the whole yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. The reason why that generation I feel like has changed is because we have new parents now. We don't have, like, my dad is 76 years old. Like, he comes from a totally different time. Just like I am, I was born in 1975. I come from a totally different time and generation. It is important that we understand that you cannot adopt other people's methods and other people's way of doing things and then expect to get the same results as what your parents did. One of the things I tell people all the time, my wife and I talk about this all the time. Very often parents want their kids, they want compliance and obedience out of their kids the same way that it was from generation. Okay, are you willing to break the belt out and beat your kids the way that we got beat? Well, then you're probably not going to get that compliance. Now, you're also not going to get the emotional issues and the stress and the they ain't gonna spend $20,000 worth of therapy over their lifetime trying to deal with some of the beatings. But my point is, you get what you put into your children. if you put into them beatings, and you got to do what I say, then what happens is you get a very compliant kid until they're not, until they don't have to. And the same is true for if you decide, you know what? No, I don't believe in touching them. I don't believe in punishing them. I don't believe in doing any of this stuff. And then you wonder why your kids are like walking around. They ain't coming up to Coach Craig saying, hey, Coach Craig. They talking about, so, hey, Billy, where you want me to go out on the field? And I'm like, who raised you? Literally, in my mind, I'm thinking, who raised you? Because I don't care what I was feeling. I don't care what I was going through. And I was that dude on the team. I was always angry about something. And the coach was like, oh, here he go. But here's the point. It was always Coach Rasso and Coach McKee and Coach Johnson and Coach Doros and, Coach Jackson. Like, it was always coach and sir. Mm-hmm. Even if I was being a complete malcontent and you had my best TO impersonation going on, it was always still coach. And I always accepted the fact that they were in authority. And that's part of it. Is almost like we have a generation of kids coming up, really the past couple of generations, where in an effort to be so different from our parents, we've actually gotten the fruit and the results out of raising our kids differently. You don't want to do what your parents did because you feel like it was cruel. And we've read all the liberal books about parenting and new age parenting. Well, guess what? That's where your kids are soft. They don't know how to ride a bike, and they ain't got no respect for nobody.
Hey, but you could do everything right, and your kid is still buck.
I say, but here's
me and my oldest were estranged for a good while.
Good minute, yeah.
A good minute. Because he wanted to do what he wanted to do.
But now here's the thing I'll say to that, though, Paul, is this. I know your history, right? I know your history, Andre. Y'all know mine. We were buck. Just some a little more than others, but we've all been on the spectrum. Here's the point. Part of the parenting is that we've all come back to that medium, if you will, that understanding. The goal is not to raise perfect children. The goal is to be able to raise children that are able to adapt and to be able to manage for themselves.
Oh, we cool. Yeah. Again.
And so, but what I'm saying is you actually do your children a disservice by not putting certain structures and things in place. And that's all I'm saying is that, in an effort to be so different, this is just my opinion on it, obviously, but I feel like in an effort to be so different, we've actually, in many ways, gone so far away from stuff that our parents did because of the way it made us feel and the way it hurt us and we didn't like it, that we're getting kids who, again, they're afraid of people online who, like, I mean, when did that start?
Right. Well, this is about control of his life. This ain't about nothing that happened. He wanted to do it on his own. Mm-hmm. And our struggle is, bro, I did it on my own. You really don't want to do it on your own.
So that you don't have
to believe.
Yes.
You would rather have to hear my mouth for a few more years and have cush and stack bread and walk out of my house as a homeowner.
Yep.
Than to go live and putting a stereo and a TV on milk crates and sleeping on a futon. You don't want to do that. I'm telling you. It's not as fun as your homeboy makes it sound.
Right.
What King Jaffa say? I've tied my shoes once. The whole experience is overrated.
Exactly. That's literally what I've been trying to get across.
It's overrated.
But his thing is, I want to do what you did. And I'm like, why would anybody want to do what I did? I didn't want to do what I did.
Fair point.
But I respect it, and we have our relationship is somewhat restored because I say, you want to be a man, you're a man. Now, what that means is what that means.
Stuff, yeah.
It means what it means.
Yeah.
Now, I may always answer the phone and I'm always answer the door, but I don't know how much I can do beyond that at this point because you grown.
Right. But at the same time, though, even if he said, okay, I want to do it the way you did it, and as bad as an idea that might be, there was still, like, you were still an example of what what I'm gonna try. And I know in your brain, you're like, no, this is stupid that you want to try it this way. But at the same time, he's looking at you like, but look how you turned out. You turned out all right.
Right.
So even if I take this horrible path and go through all this suffering, I'm still gonna be like you. Like we good. We got it. And I know that doesn't 1 and 1 plus don't equal 2 in this situation.
No,
I get it.
Not at all.
But he's young. And that's just, but like I said, that's how my parents taught me was, all right, well, go out there and fail.
Figure it out.
And I appreciate them for that. But the things that I've done or the things that I've decided to do as a parent, and I wish other people would as well. I'm not saying, and by no means am I calling myself a perfect parent or anything like that.
Ain't no such thing.
What I did was I took the stuff that I didn't like from my parents and tried to improve on that and keep the things that worked and implement that into my kids' life. Like, that's how I am parenting now. Is I'm not a big yeller. My father was. I'm not, like, I am a disciplinarian, but I established crazy early on so I don't have to do it later. So my kids know if I do something,
it's easier to loosen up than tighten up.
Man, so
1,000%. Yes.
So that's my way of doing it. And that's, and so far, fingers crossed, it's working to this point.
He got babies, Paul.
I know.
Well, I got a 14.
I know. Yeah.
Hey,
she's a girl. I'm saying he got a boy
that's
out there beating up walls.
We talking about my kid. I'm talking about he want to do it on his own. He's a football player in college, y'all. So like, there's only so much. He doing it. Like, he ain't kind of bullshit. Right. Like,
right, exactly.
He's on. He got scholarship. He just want to do it on his own. That's it. Right. And I disagree.
And that's fine. and that's almost and literally what you're saying is, it's almost like you're doing it in the margins. One of the things that comes to mind for me, though, I think about, because I have a son and a daughter, and they couldn't be more different, right? Their personalities, their characters, their natures, right? I see elements of myself in both of them, but my son is like, I imagine him, he's just like me, except he didn't grow up in Forest Park. He didn't grow up with all of the friends and people that I came up with. So he has a little bit of a different life in the way that he kind of deals with his relationships with his friends. But I only raise that because I think about how I'm watching him, and to Andre's point, I'm watching him. I don't want to do the things that my dad and my mom did. I don't want to some of the mistakes. And I feel like sometimes in an effort to almost fix it, we overcorrect, we overcompensate. And so getting back to this girl who's fighting the substitute teacher, like, when you think about, like, I think about, I literally can't, and maybe I'm just getting old. I can't think of a scenario with any of my teachers, and let's face it, we had a lot of the same teachers. Paul, we had a lot of the same teachers where it's like literally the same people, not just like the same type. We went to the same schools, and I'm thinking there are certain teachers where I look back on it and it's like I probably should have fired off on them. But it never crossed my mind. Right.
It literally, I didn't even think it was an option.
It wasn't that. There you go. It was never even. And I even think about, like, in college, when I'm an adult, I'm actually a man at this
college
point.
Is different.
No, here's the point, though. I understood there were consequences.
Yes.
And I knew that the consequences not only would be felt at home, but I'll just be candid with you. And I see this. That's why I was saying I see the similarities in my son. I didn't want to let my parents. I did not want to let my parents down. I remember when I was getting ready to be suspended and kicked out of St. X High School, and I was sitting in Mr. Meyer's office and just waiting for my mother to show up to the school. I got in a fight with it. Shout out to Brad Ruther. I got in a fight with Brad Ruther in the stairwell. I ain't gonna tell you what he did. I mean, we've all grown up. The point is,
We know what he did by what you just said, but go ahead.
Listen, that's enough. We'll handle that later. We'll handle that later on in season 2.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah, he found out. And let's face it, there was a lot of people that found out because people like to test me. But the point was, I remember sitting there thinking not about Mr. Meyer. I wasn't thinking so much even about my friends and people at the school and whatever. My biggest concern was I didn't want to get kicked out of St. X because I didn't want to let my parents down. Mm-hmm. I didn't want them to be disappointed. I didn't want my father to be like, dang, like you couldn't do it. Like you couldn't hold your composure enough. You knew that there was going to be problems. You knew what you were walking into. I raised you.
I told you this on the way to school.
There you go. Right. Okay.
You let me down.
The point is, it worked out. It worked out. I ain't get kicked out. But my point is that even to Paul's point, even with peer pressure is different now. Like the way that the only thing I'm saying is a lot of times these kids, they don't understand what it is to see anything beyond themselves. Whether it's, I don't want to, like case in point, even when I was at Roger Bacon, I didn't want to get in trouble because I didn't want to let my team down. I remember one year it was like, my dad told me I couldn't run track. And the reason why I couldn't run track was because he said, we don't do C's around here. He said, your grades ain't high enough. And so I was like, yeah, but it's only 2 classes. He was like, only? You're a national merit scholar. We don't do C's. Like, what is your problem? Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't run track that year. Now, the thing is, it wasn't necessarily my dad. It wasn't even that I couldn't run track. It was the fact that I had teammates and people in my school. They were like, dude, what are we going to do? How are we going to run a 4x1? What are we going to do about the hurdles? What are we going to, like, seeing something beyond yourself.
I know what Dre going to say. Y'all was going to lose anyway.
Listen.
I mean, we were in the same conference. So,
listen. Listen. Let me tell you something.
Y'all gonna lose anyway. You saved yourself some aggravation. Free time and everything.
I was looking at every exchange because I remember we had the GCLs over at LaSalle, and I was sitting there, and I want to say I was in like lane 5, Andre's in lane 3, and I'm thinking anybody, like just get me the exchange clean, give me a shot. Just give me a shot. You know what I'm saying? Man, we got to the 3rd leg and they started walking. I ain't gonna say that. They started walking this dude down. I'm like, oh my God. Because what happened was, even though we were in, different lanes, how they stagger them, I'm getting the baton, I'm getting the handoff at basically the same time as Andre. And I'm like,
oh yeah, it's over.
And this was many years ago. This is back before all the injuries kicked in on me. And this is back when, Andre was more Squidward than Patrick, right? It was a long time ago. But the point was, I didn't want to let my team down, right? There's this something about looking beyond yourself that I find that kids don't seem to have today. It's not, and that comes from home, in my opinion. You establish that at home, let's just say. There can be other circumstances.
Well, no, it gets to the point of my parents allowed me to fail.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like that's going on in a lot of situations. I'm not, because this is definitely not a blanket conversation, because there are people raising amazing kids doing amazing things. So this ain't for y'all, but there has to be something that is at least allowed to fail, so you know how to deal with rejection, know how to deal with not getting your way, not even if you did everything right. Like we all 3 of us went to predominantly white high schools. We have all done exactly what we were supposed to do and still got less than as a result, just because, if no other reason, because we were where we were and they were who they were. Mm-hmm. And so and as you fast forward in life, shit still goes on. Like we've all, as adults, had situations. Yes, I'm qualified for the job. Yes, I'm this and that. I check all the boxes. Why didn't I get it? That person ain't even got half the boxes. Well, same shit happened to me in high school. So, I get the lesson.
Exactly.
And now it's like we're trying to skip steps. We trying to make it where, yes, it's about you. This is, you my only one, or whatever it looks like. And no, you don't have an authority figure. You don't, that person ain't your boss. You ain't got to respect them. Are they paying you? Well, if they ain't paying you, you ain't got to say what they say. Well, by the time you get to the point where you old enough to get paid from somebody, you've already, your respect for authority figures has already gone out the window. So now you don't respect grandmama. You don't respect, so now you're not listening to people who have advice for you, because you were taught you ain't got to respect those people. They ain't paying your bills. And I feel like that's part of where a disconnect happens. I know later on we're going to talk about, transfer portals and things like that in different episodes for college athletics and things like that. But all of this starts kind of at home with not allowing people to fail or be able to teach the lesson in failure. It's not the fact that you failed. My parents always gave me the lesson after I failed, like, whether it's, touching the stove when it's hot. Now you understand why you shouldn't touch the stove. I tried to tell you, but now you found out that it's hot. They tried to tell me beforehand, but I had to touch it and find out for myself. And so there's always a lesson in failure. If you don't find out the lesson in the failure, then you've double failed at that point in time.
You said something, and I'm gonna try to connect these dots. But you were talking about allowing someone to fail. I'm reminded, and this goes back a couple of months, probably at this point, but I remember you talking about an itch that Paul needed to scratch. The conversation surrounding Ja Morant, whenever he was going through whatever he did, posting that stuff on social media, the guns, all that stuff in the nightclub, whatever. One of the things that really, and I could tell that it was like it bothered you, but I understood, knowing you and your situation, it bothered you. Talking about basically a lot of the smoke that Ja Morant should have been receiving, somehow some stray smoke was like getting over to his parents. And it was almost like Ja Morant was acting a fool out in these streets, and they were somehow acting like, well, this is because he had bad parents. And
his parents were great. They're just not very good adults, because his parents are also acting a fool.
And the point is that those things can be separated. We can look at those, and we have to be mature enough to compartmentalize. But the reason why I raised it up is because you mentioned like the transfer portal. One of the things about Ja Morant that I find, and I know this because my wife, her alma mater is Murray State, which is where Ja played basketball, right? That's where he went to school. And one of the things that you find is that a lot of people who don't know, because why would you care, until Ja Morant kind of took over the tournament back his last year in school. Nobody who wasn't like following AAU for the past 20 years, they don't know who Ja Morant is until that moment, the casual fan. But what you find is that the fact that he even ended up at Murray State as opposed to somewhere else is a reflection, frankly, of the parenting, is a reflection of the fact that this is a person who, no, and here's why I say that. He could have very easily, and I'm speaking from experience, he could have very easily said, you know what? I have the talent and I deserve to be at a more prominent school. I have the skill set that would allow for me to do that, but this is the best offer I'm getting. This is the best thing for me. This is going to be the best situation. Now, I'm speaking from experience, and I didn't have the direction, frankly. I love them, and it's nothing that they did wrong necessarily, but I didn't have anybody telling me where to go. My family was actually falling apart as I entered my senior year in high school. So for me, I actually walked away from a lot of scholarship opportunities because I felt like I was a better athlete than I actually was. And frankly, I just hadn't finished developing, right? I just hadn't. And if I had gone JUCO, for example, if I had gone to a D2 school or something like that, if I had gone somewhere else, I probably would have been better off. But frankly, again, about taking those losses, about being willing to let your child fail, that's the type of thing, and I know I went a long way to connect it, but that's the type of thing that I think is underrated. To Andre's point, his parents allowed him to face some consequences, and he fell down. What they tell you when your kids are little, every time they fall and skin their knee, don't just go run over and pick them up. Let them, wipe it off and deal with it.
He had dental.
Yeah.
Boy had braces. I seen him when he was a kid. The boy had braces.
Right.
So I know his parents took care of him.
Absolutely. Right. Right. And that's the whole point I'm getting at, is that a lot of times, and like even as you were talking about your older son, like the fact of the matter is that boy gonna go out here and fall on his face. He's gonna make mistakes. He's gonna do things. And the fact is, it doesn't make you a bad parent.
No.
Right.
And that's the point I'm making, is that sometimes, like just like John Moran or whoever, or like I did, you're going to make mistakes, and it's not necessarily a reflection of parenting. And that's the point I'm making, is I don't want this to be misunderstood as though we're saying kids who go out here and mess up or do something wrong, it's always the parent's fault. What I'm saying is that parents need to understand what their influence means. And part of that is making sure that your job is just to prepare them to be an adult. That's really all your job is.
That's literally it. I'm preparing my child to take care of himself.
And they're not going to be able to do that if they don't know how to handle conflict and overcoming and dealing with resolutions and stuff, you know.
Well, and discipline. Being on time, being punctual, right? Like, that's the best thing you could do, is show up.
Literally, funny that you said it. Like, I tell people all the time when people talk about my dad, and I tell them all the time, you know, I literally don't remember a day as a child where my father didn't come home. My father got up and went to work every single day. If there's nothing else I can take away from childhood, my father showed up. And that's the type of example, or even, and here's the thing, he dealt with a lot of garbage. He dealt with a lot of stuff in corporate America. There was a lot of things that he didn't like, but he didn't revolt on his job. He didn't take a gun in and shoot up IBM because he didn't like the fact that he didn't get a promotion or somebody didn't treat him right or his boss was talking to him sideways. He understood there was something more important than that slight or that diss or that conflict he had to resolve. He sucked it up, but he understood, I have kids. You know, I have a family. I have a responsibility. And part of that preparation came from his parents. You know, part of that preparation came from the example that my grandmother set. You know, he wanted to set a better example than what was set for him by his dad, and he did that. And that's where, again, going back to the original question that, you know, Andre asked, you know, it's not that everything falls on the parents, but I'm sorry, if you're firing off on a teacher, I immediately have to ask, where are the parents? Who raised you?
It at least starts there. Now you may be able to feel, you may be able to uncover some other things.
Yes,
they got behavioral issues or they got mental, you know, this or that.
But the investigation has to start.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a story here. Right,
Paul got all the stories.
My first day at the Mount, right, because I went out to Quincy to the D2 school and F that off, and I was back home making malts at UDF by January.
Shout out to United Dairy Farmers.
Right.
Strawberry milkshake with whipped cream, please. Thank you.
Right. And that's Cats was what about the peanut butter, the cookies and cream? Y'all don't know about that.
Yes.
And the chocolate milk, boy.
Yeah.
But anyway, let me get back before we get down a rabbit hole in these Nah, but I came back and then I was working at UDF, and one of the coaches at Mount St. Joe was like, "The hell are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm back home. That didn't work out." So he talked me into coming down, meeting the coaches and whatnot. And I was on campus that next fall, so I had to sit out because obviously my grades wasn't worth much. Right. And I, wouldn't have been eligible to play. So I sit out that 1 year. Then we came back we had spring, right? And I remember the first day we was doing this thing called County Fair. And it was just cone running, but it was just different stations. And I got to the station of the coach who recruited me, and he started talking to me crazy. Like real crazy. And I unbuckled my chin strap. And my boy to this day, Boo, Rachel, grabbed me like, P, don't do it. Don't do it. Needless to say, I made it all the way through school and stayed on the team. But yeah, I almost wiped out. First day.
And that's exactly what that was for.
Yeah.
Not only for you to be able to kind of like level up and see the bigger picture, but I think about Boo actually saying, "Nah, man, I ain't gonna even let you flame out like that."
Right.
Side note, I'm back to my side note shit. Where was this girl's friends to be like, hey,
Yes.
don't?
Yes, that's
Yes.
my point.
Yes.
And I also say this because he took a shot at me earlier, but the fact is, when I was in St. X and I was fighting every racist, bigoted white boy at St. X, I literally, Paul will tell you, day one, like I was even before day one because we had already started 2 days doing football practice stuff. I came in on 9. Like it took. I was on 10 by second period, right? By the second time,
he was gonna fall for the Sabonis, and that's
exactly
what I was telling him. These white boys they gonna call you a nigger, and they gonna get you to take yourself out by whooping their ass. And I'm like, don't fall for that shit, Billy.
And here's the point: I listened enough to not get suspended and not get kicked out, so it wasn't anything like permanency on my record. But I look back on that experience my freshman year, and literally, it's like there's hardly a week that goes by where I don't think about how like now I understand what Paul was trying to tell me my freshman year in high school. If you just get through it, this is all one big like staging, one big like test obstacle course. Just get through it. You ain't even got to get through it without bruises and scratches. Just get through it. The point is, somebody, like you said, Andre, somebody has to pull your coattails and tell you. Somebody where, and like you said about the little girl, like not only where are her friends, but where are her friends' parents? Like it says, don't let your friends go out like that.
Right. It's a domino effect. It's a complete domino. Like an entire system of a community failed that little girl.
Failed, yes. Everybody around her failed. Yep.
Before
especially the people, especially her classmates.
Yep.
Somebody should have called. Hey, girl,
mostly the person who recorded it.
The person,
because if that doesn't get recorded and it doesn't get released on social media, that is handled behind closed doors in that office.
And everybody moves on, and the only people that know about it, it's like me telling you the story about Mr. Meyer and me fighting Brad Ruther after 5th period in the stairwell. Nobody knows about that other than me telling you this. 30 years later,
right? Because we
didn't have social media. He definitely wasn't gonna snitch, and I wasn't, because it wasn't something that you taught, and we didn't have cell phones back then. But the point is, John and Tion and different ones, they didn't say nothing about it. It's like, the story goes on. And that's why it's so tragic that now she has to work basically for this not to define her life. Because this is all we know about this.
Look at the young lady in Tennessee who made some comments in high school on social and lost her job, but they brought her back.
There we go. Yep.
All right, I want to call APB out on the truth from parents.
The whole truth?
The whole truth from parents. Explain, from everything to what your child can and cannot do on the grand scale. Are you talented enough to enter into this arena or this realm? Are you smart enough to go to Harvard? Is that painting good? You're not tall enough to hoop.
Painting.
I'm just saying, like, we gotta be honest. I was trifling in high school until I had you. Especially around the talk, right? Too often kids get here the same way, right? They get here how they get here. And too often parents act like they didn't get here the way they got here. The stork, the Easter bunny, Santa Claus. Tell these kids the truth. That might be why they're not listening to us. We give them these devices that have the entire history of the world's knowledge inside of them, and then we still lying to them.
Yep.
Maybe if we told them the truth about how nobody cares about them, how they have to work harder than everybody else, how that life is a competition, whether you're an athlete or a programmer or a banker. Like you're in competition no matter what. You got to pay dues.
Wow. And you know, with that, Paul, that's so true, because you think about the truth. Here's the thing about the internet. Google makes us all right on the same footing. And the only thing you do by lying to your kids is make it to where they can't trust you. They're going to find out the truth eventually anyway. They're going to learn it from somewhere. Do you want them to learn it from a healthy place, a good place, a safe space? Or do you want them to learn it from, you know, the joker on the street who they looking at him thinking, you're telling me he's bad. You're telling me he's wrong. You're telling me he's not what I need to be doing and living life. But he told me the truth. Meanwhile, you out here sugarcoating.
I'm gonna touch it one more time because Billy, you will appreciate this. This kind of comes in the realm of church folk who got saved and act like they ain't never did nothing bad before. Because
and want to judge people by the letter of the law.
It does help to be more realistic with your kids. Like I have a 14-year-old now, and me and her have realistic conversations of things and failures that I've had. And she appreciates we have a more open dialogue. When you sit there and roll out the perfect way that you used to be, even though we know you all lying, it makes your kids shut down. Yeah, because they can't live up to that expectation. You better off letting them know, yeah, I done made some mistakes. I probably done did some things that I should take back and stuff like that. They appreciate that. They understand that, and you'll have a better dialogue. So I'm 100% with you on the truth. I ain't ready to tell my youngest about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus yet. We're gonna let them still be kids for a little bit longer, but eventually they'll learn as well that and what life has for them. Because as we've already discussed on previous episodes, being this shade and living in this country, life ain't been no crystal stair. Let's just keep it that way.
Easter Bunny's different. Easter Bunny's different. Santa Claus never.
Well, here's the thing.
Here's why. Because I'm not about to give some old fat white man credit for what me and my wife did.
I'll take it a step further. Forget Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. Every Sunday, I preach and I tell people, and I tell them straight up, like, you go back to Cincinnati, ask them and say, hey, you ever heard of William Craig? They'll be like, oh, I'm not familiar. You say, oh, you remember Billy Craig? Oh, him, right? And I say that only to say that I haven't been a preacher my whole life.
Right.
I haven't been a married man my whole life. I haven't been mature my whole life. I haven't been composed. I haven't always managed to control my anger. It's like, yeah, I'm actually kind of just getting comfortable in this new person. I tell people all the time, people at church, they be like, oh my gosh, I just can't imagine you getting angry. And I'm thinking to myself, you just don't know. But that's why the truth matters, because then when people start finding out the truth, they be like, how come you never told me? Now I can't trust you. Credibility matters. My credibility as a parent to my children, because we want them to like us in the moment, instead of one day we're not going to be here, either because they're going to be living on their own or because we'll be gone. They need to know. But you know what? My daddy wasn't perfect, but he was honest, and he kept me honest, and he held me accountable. That's great. No, that's real, because I deal with it all the time. I was telling you about the coaching thing and baseball, and like, there's a lot of these parents that it's like they want their child to be the next, great center fielder, all-star, shortstop, pitcher, catcher, whatever. Hey. And it's like, you haven't invested in him, and
boy,
he's going to grow up to be a maximum height of 5'3". Like,
right.
And he has no muscles. He's gonna weigh 145 pounds. Like, what sport is he gonna play? Like, get him a trumpet. You know what I'm saying? Get him a saxophone or a keyboard. Like Teddy Riley made a great career from himself. Prince. Like, these are diminutive cats. Like, these are small men, and they're doing great. Like,
or get on a wrestling mat or go box.
Yeah. Right.
Where you guaranteed to go against somebody your size.
That's a featherweight, right?
But don't do Paul and crush the kid's finger paint and tell him it ain't shit. You ain't no Van Gogh.
Hey, no, you know what?
Pick up a calculator.
To be honest, because kids know when you lying.
Yeah.
Especially if you got a kid that's really drawing, trying to be an artist, and you be like, oh, he gonna be looking at you like, man, this is whack. This is what I'm trying to do, and you saying this is good. Come on, man.
True story. Funny that you say that. My daughter has picked up on drawing and painting, and she actually has a really good skill set for it. My son, I remember we went home to visit my mom. My mom has all of my paintings and awards and stuff from back when I was in my art program, and I did a lot of. I was a pretty talented artist, and my son, he tried to kind of pick it up, and he literally like he got about 3 or 4 drawings in. It was like crumple. That's it. I don't have it, but I wasn't gonna lie to him. Like, son, just keep at it, and you can get. Nah, man.
Nah, bro.
You know. You're a lot of things. You just ain't an artist. So keep it. Yeah, there you go. Keep it 100. Keep it a buck with your kids, Paul says.
I just got off the recruiting trail from last year. Bruh, I had to tell them, look, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, they not coming.
Nope.
They not coming.
Nope.
But that doesn't mean nobody's coming.
It just ain't going to be them.
It ain't going to be them, no.
Mm-hmm.
Failure. We back to teaching them how to deal with adversity and failure.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's it. Another episode down. We want to thank you once again for being a part of our show. Please feel free to leave comments in the comments section. Also, make sure that you follow us on all of our different platforms. And we look forward to seeing you again. We'll have more hotness, more topics. We'll be bringing it once again for you. So we'll see you next time. Be blessed. And again, thank you for supporting the Gray Matters. We're out.
Peace.
So a preacher, a stay-at-home dad, and a rapper walk into a bar.
I am my ancestors back from the grave, no longer a slave, beat to the gods, kneel, pray, surviving my day. A threat to society, cause Malcolm showed me the way. I'm young, black, intelligent.
Oh, now they afraid.
It's too late, I am the king, I am the spark to the brain. I am the light that fought the dark and now you're seeing the rain. I am the thing they spent their whole life killing. To find out, I am the rose that grew from under their building. This ain't for likes, this is a fight so you can open your mind. Peel the scab back, reveal the blood and see what we'll find. I promise. Like LeBron, I am just one of a kind. No longer will I accept the blind, leading the blind. Keep it a buck, say what I want, not giving a screaming afterward like Park until the day my heart stops. And when I do, remember when I take my last breath, just remind the tape and witness all the knowledge I left. The grave. So I said, a preacher, a stay-at-home dad, and a rapper walk into a bar. The Gray Matters.